I'm going to show you how I help my client, Jonathan, also known as the 99 Physio, go from 22 patients a week when he first started as a solo practitioner to 40 patients a week and consistently booked out, earning an income of well above $220,000 per year with time freedom. But first, if you don't know who I am, my name is Phil, and I've been in the health field for over a decade, having started a fitness business, a solo physio practice, and run health retreats. Now I'm a health business architect and communication coach that focuses on helping health professionals grow their businesses while gaining time freedom. Let's get to the video. Hey, I'm gonna show you exactly how we took this physio from earning about 100K a year to 240K in just under 2 years. So the first thing I really want you to understand is that the mindset is where this all began. In order for you to get from 100 to 240, it starts with how you think about the problem, and from there, how you get to your eventual outcome. So the first thing you have to accept is to embrace discomfort. Now, the reason why you need to do this is because in order to get there, it's actually not going to be very comfortable, and you actually have to break a lot of habits that you could be doing right now. Because most people, in order to reach something that they've never done before, it's actually by investigating what they do currently. And if what you're doing currently is already maxed out, you're really tired, you're already working your 40 hours and you're on 120K, then there's something about this that needs to change. So becoming a 240, 250K physio solo owner requires thinking like a 200 and 250K solo owner, which is uncomfortable. Okay, now, the second one is we had to think inversely. So what this means is, what is everyone doing that gets them to 120, 130? We can't copy that. Most people do 38 to 40 hour weeks to earn roughly, say, 150 to 160K per year. That's on the high end, right? But if you want to get to 240, you can't do this, because if you work 50 hours per week, right, and you try to get to 200 using the exact same way you're doing it now, most likely you will get to 180, 190 before you cap out. You just physically do not have the hours left in your day. And that comes down to pricing, okay? So we'll get into that a bit later, but this is why pricing is really, really important. So instead, when we approached this problem of earning 200, 240, we thought, what is everyone not doing that I must do? And what that looked like for us is a time cap. We do not want to work more than 30 to 25 to 35 hours a week to earn 200K plus, okay? And that fundamentally will shift the way that you think about the problem. Number three, now that we identified that time is a limiting factor, right? We want to make sure that we always kept on time. We now move into this decision. All decisions must be time compounding or time ROI. Okay, so what this means is most people optimize for money ROI. So most of the time what this means is I spend, say, $50 and I want to get, say, $100 return. That's an ROI of 100%. And that's supposed to be really good. However, the problem with this type of thinking is just because you optimize for dollar ROI does not mean you optimize for time ROI. And so let me give you an example. So if you work 40 hours a week and you put on an advertisement that gets you 3 new patients a week, you've just increased your working time by potentially 3 hours. You've just increased your working time by 3 hours. And your ROI might be high in dollars, but you've just created a negative ROI on time. What this means for us is you cannot think about your ROI in terms of money, especially if the money return causes a decrease in your time return. So what we did was all decisions must trade time for more time. Let me give an example. If you create content online and you put advertising spend onto it, as long as it's a good piece of content, it might have taken you 1 hour to create that piece of content. But if you then put $50 on it per week and it reaches 3,000 people without you doing anything, that is an infinite time ROI. All decisions we made were optimized for infinite time ROI. Now, obviously, not all decisions can be optimized for time, but if you're thinking along these lines, eventually you're going to have a very time efficient business because you're not trying to do things over and over again. You're always thinking, I need to make sure that the things I'm doing will give me back my time. And the last component is ecosystems thinking. We set out to build every aspect of his business so that it complements each other, like a rainforest. Because what we want to do is, from lead gen to sales to pricing to product development, all of these components should enhance each other. Because one of the mistakes a lot of business owners make is they do things that seem good in isolation, but it actually contradicts other aspects of the business and it causes them to have more issues in the future. For example, if you are trying to build a premium clinic, you build 200 per consult and you want to hold that price point, but then you run an advertising offer for a $50 introduction session, and you see how that kills your credibility. Because although it's true that you will probably bring more people in for the $50 introduction session, what it doesn't do is it doesn't bring you the right people. It doesn't bring you the people who are happy to pay 200 per consult because you're advertising something that's $50. Even though there are many things that work, not all things will work within your ecosystem. So that's why whatever we did, we asked ourselves, does this match the ecosystem? Okay, so this was basically all the mindset components that we needed to make sure we were on the same page on before we began building any part of his business. Okay, so the next component is lead generation. Now, lead generation to me is actually pretty simple. The definition is getting patients through the door. And there's only really two ways to do that. You get people to know about you and you get people to talk about you. And those are the two main ways that you're going to get people to want to come see you. If nobody knows who you are, they're not going to be able to access your services. So for visibility, Jonathan already had a TikTok and an Instagram. And he already had a pretty decent TikTok and Instagram when he first started. But in order to enhance the effect of these assets, we wanted to implement an ad strategy. So he would create organic content and he was roughly pushing out about 2 or 3 reels per week, both his TikTok and Instagram. So he would just repurpose. So it wasn't like a big deal. And then successful reels were kept and amplified with meta advertising. And this was about $10 to $15 a day. Now, what this does is it gets you probably about 800 to 1,000 eyeballs per day. So in a week, he will get about 8,000 eyeballs extra. And all it costs him is about $70 to $90. This goes back to our thinking about time. I wasn't a fan of getting him to post every single day because it just gets boring and your content gets shit anyway. But I was a fan of, okay, well, let's look at what works and let's just spend some money on getting the eyeballs coming. And $10 to $15 a day is actually not a big deal. A week, that's barely even one consult. And that basically enhances visibility. And look, you do need some skill. You do need to create interesting content and helpful content. And that's why I always recommend that your organic content, you should experiment and play around with things. And whatever works, that's the stuff that you boost on Meta. The second aspect is to get people to talk about you, which is your word of mouth and your referral. So the best way to actually get this is just to deliver a great product. As long as you deliver really, really good sessions and you get people the outcome that they need, most of the time you will generate good word of mouth and you will have good referrals. So this is actually more of a product aspect. It's not a lead generation strategy that you can systematically do like organic posting or boosting it with ads. Okay, and the last aspect I would say is building his audience through his organic socials. So at the time of us starting together, I think he had maybe 30 or 40,000 followers on TikTok and he had like 2,000 followers on Instagram. Now 18 months later, he has like 62K on TikTok. And he has approximately, I think, 10,000 on Instagram. His following has grown a lot. And besides posting really good content, he's also using his advertising strategy. The beautiful thing here is it's also building a warm audience. Let me talk about why this is important. When you're building the audience, about 5% are ready to buy. 95% are dormant or waiting. What that means is a lot of his audience hasn't used him yet, which means there's so much potential for these people to eventually get in pain and to come see him in the future. So his profile is actually a huge asset because the more followers he has, the more value he delivers in that organic space, the more people are going to be dormant. And when they do need a physio, they're going to have him front of mind. Okay, so basically this is his lead generation system and it's been running and building for about 18 months, which gets him anywhere from 4 to new patients a week. Costs him about maybe 2-3 hours a week of content creation. And in terms of dollars invested, it costs him about, let's just say, $120 to $160 per week in ad spend. 48 patients a week. For a solo practitioner, that's a lot of patients and not that much time investment. And this is the cool part. If he wanted to scale, all he's got to do is scale ad spend. If he wanted to open up his books or if he wanted to hire more people, he would just increase his ad spend to maybe double. So maybe it's 320, maybe 500 a week. And because the visibility will go up, it's highly likely he'll jump from 8 new patients to 10, 12, 14, and very quickly he'll either fill up his own books or he'll fill up somebody else he hired. So he has that option because this lead generation flywheel works so quickly. Like I say, I'm not joking. It only takes him about 2 or 3 hours of content creation plus a bit of money to keep this going forever. Okay, so that's the mindset. That's one arm. This is just him getting patients through the door, and that's the system he's created. I don't see it changing. We might add YouTube at some point, but this is what he's got right now, and it's working like a charm. Okay, so now let's talk about the next piece, which is really important. So most people think that pricing is just how much you charge. Pricing is how much you charge, but it also is something else very important. It sends a message about the quality of your service. For the most part, if you price high, people expect a high quality of service, and they also think it's a little bit more valuable. If you price low, people are more forgiving in terms of quality, but if they want something really, really good, they're also not going to come to you because they see it as more of a budget option. So why is pricing important? Because if you want to earn over 200K without seeing more than 40 patients, it is an absolute non-negotiable that you have to price anywhere from 140 to 160 average consult. So let's just do the math. If you work 40 consults a week and you charge 140 per consult and you work, say, 48 weeks a year, that equals out to be 40 multiplied by 140 multiplied by 48. That equals out to be 268,800. That's at 40 consults a week with an average price of 140, and you're working 48 weeks, so you're taking a month off. Now let's just say you want to take 2 months off because you like freedom. So let's just multiply that by 44. 40 times by 140 times by 44. Now you're on 246. You need to charge minimum, say 140 average consult if you want to hit 250, 260 a year at 48 weeks. You have to charge at least about 140 average per consult if you want to be making over 220K per year as a physio. And after you manage your overheads, you're probably sitting at 200K. Why this is now important is if you have to charge this much, this means that you have to charge a certain amount, and this sends a certain message. Now, for the record, Jonathan charges on average 164 average consult, and his closest competitors are anywhere from 112 to 142 average per consult. If you're looking at this price point alone as a customer, 99 Physio clearly charges more than everybody else. In order for him to not compete on price, and it's $30 more, in order for him to not compete on price, he had to do a few things really, really well. And the first one being differentiation. When I talk about differentiation, it's not about trying so hard to be different. It's about showing your approach. And if you have a genuine way of treating somebody that is not cookie cutter, you should show this in your content. And when people come and see you, you should be doing that within your treatment so it's aligned with what they're seeing online. And what this does is, as long as it is somewhat unique, the people who see it, the people who resonate with it, are going to seek you out. This is better than posting generic content about exercises or conditions that every other physio is doing anyway. You have to find your own unique angle. You have to find the way that you work with a certain condition or genuine insights so that you can truly differentiate yourself and you give people something that they haven't really thought about. Now, the second part, because Jonathan was charging 164, this is now in the premium range. If you want to charge a premium range, people need to feel the premium. So remember this, premium is a feeling, not logic. And so the analogy I like to use is when you walk into a 5-star hotel, you immediately accept that you will likely have to pay higher than a budget hotel. And if you go to a 5-star hotel and you see that it's only, say, $50 a night, you would think that there's something amiss here. Same way, if you go to a hostel with backpackers and it's trying to charge you 100, 150 or 200 per night, this doesn't make any sense. You wouldn't want to pay for it. But if they're charging you $9, $10, $15 for a bed per night, then you're more likely to trust it because nothing sus is going on. What this meant was he needed to invest in his space. So he had to increase his furniture game. He rented a new space to work out of. He invested in the design and color scheme. So when people walk into his place, they think, oh, wow, I get it. So what this does is the moment they walk into his space, they feel, oh, I get it. This is exactly why I'm going to be paying 164, 165 per consult for this place. Now, one other thing that set him apart from everybody else was his price transparency. I don't know why, but a lot of clinics, they like to hide their prices. Even in his immediate area, there are places that hide their prices. This is not a good idea. If you're going to charge people, especially a premium rate, you want them to do all their research. You want them to make an educated decision based off your content, based off your pricing, whether it's the right decision for you. So because he has good price transparency, patients who book in are already qualified, because when you price high, it disqualifies people who judge you based off price. Now, I'm not saying that price is not important. I'm just saying that there's a certain level of people who care about the problem so much that they're willing to forgive the price difference in order to work with you. And the last point to this is it takes courage. When you display the highest prices in the area, you also by default suggest that you've got the most premium brand in the area. That's the price transparency aspect. The next part is Google reviews. Now I want to take you guys through the customer journey. So if you're a patient, you've just discovered Jonathan's content through an Instagram ad, you go on his page, you see all these other pieces of content that you think are really, really helpful, and you do have a nagging ankle injury and you are in the market for a physio. Now you scroll through his stuff, you kind of like what he's about, you've seen all the content that he's put out regarding the ankle, interested in working with him. You head to his website, you click on his website, you see a nice branding, then you go to the book now button and it's $179 or $185 for an initial consult. Immediately, you might be thinking, whoa, that's higher than market rate. And so you do a little bit more research. You go on Google reviews and he's got 200 plus Google reviews. You go on his TikTok, he's got 60,000 TikTok followers. You go on his Instagram, he's got 10,000 followers. You can't help but think that this guy's quality is very high because the Google reviews plus IG following plus TikTok following screams authority. In order to charge high prices, you must scream authority, which is exactly what this does. So he's got over 250 reviews, he's got 10,000 IG followers, and he's got 60,000 TikTok followers, which if you don't know him, you might look at it and think, well, clearly he has to be delivering some sort of value. And look, there is an argument that just because he has all these doesn't mean he's a good physio. Yes, I get that. You can always scrutinize that. But for the average person who doesn't know too much about health, they look at that and they think, well, he's got to be doing something right if he's able to get 250 5-star reviews alone. Okay, so now go back to the patient journey. He's like, okay, well, it's a little bit more expensive, but he seems really, really good and his content has helped me. I think I'm going to book in. And here's why that's important. The content piece chimes into the pricing piece because helpful content increases buy-in and forgives price discrepancy. Okay, so his closest competitor is about $20 below his average consult price. So really the question we should be asking is, does my content give enough value that the $20 difference doesn't matter? And the answer for him resoundingly is yes, because if you just think like a patient for a second, if I've done 3 or 4 exercises that you've listed on your page and it's helped me with my pain immediately, would I want to come see you despite paying $20 more? Or am I still going to risk it with some person I don't know who has not given me any content online, who has not helped me in any way? The answer is no. I'd much rather go see somebody who's already helped me online and I'm happy to spend $20 more. Now, the last part to this equation is here, going back to lead generation. With increased pricing will cause increased query. So people are willing to pay, but because you're pricing a little bit higher, you also have a little bit more friction to get through. That's why you need to improve your online sales skills. And this is what Jonathan learned from me in the very beginning of our relationship. You need to learn how to ask the right questions to close online. Because of probably 30 DMs, 5 or 6 of them are ready to buy, right? They're ready to actually book in, but you need to learn how to do it. If he has the space and he wants to reply to every DM, he could probably convert 10 to 15 of those 30 DMs, at least for the first session. But if he doesn't, he can gauge which ones seem the most serious, and then he can convert them online. So he's already getting 4 to 8 patients a week that are booking in on their own. But if he wants to then answer some of these questions and nurture them through a sequence, he can book even more patients in and bump that up. That's up to him to decide if he's got the time or energy to do it. But essentially, if you price high, you are going to naturally get a few more questions. And if you learn how to pitch online, how to close people online, you're going to see your bookings increase dramatically. Okay, so that's the pricing component. And now I hope what you've seen here is that the lead generation, the content he's making, the advertising that he's doing, it actually funnels into why he's able to price high. And because he's able to price high and he's able to save himself some time, that actually frees up more of his time so that if he wants to create more content, he can. So between the lead generation and pricing alone, you can see how there's a symbiotic relationship between quality, lead generation, and the willingness of people to convert. Okay, and now the final simplistic piece of the puzzle is product. Now, the reason I've left product to the very end here is because I believe most clinicians are already very good at the product component. What they're missing is lead generation and understanding more about how it plays into their pricing. But product, there are still a few things that you need to know if you want to make that 200K threshold. And here's what they are. Number one, you still need to deliver results, okay? None of this actually works if you don't have the ability to deliver great results. And what that means is you get the goal in a timely manner. You wouldn't get Google reviews if you weren't doing a good job. You can ask them for it. Maybe they're not nice enough to give you a 5-star because they're just like you. But to get 200, 250, 300, you need people to really enjoy the experience. And the second skill you need to learn is sales and communication. This is non-negotiable. Why? Because once you get a lead, once you get the patient through the door, it's far better to maximize the revenue per patient than it is to keep finding new patients. And this is where the ethics is really, really important. Most patients, if it's a legitimate issue, should get roughly 6 to 8 sessions over the course of 6 to 8 weeks. And if you're not getting them to that point, you're probably not doing a very good job. Some conditions, don't get me wrong, they'll be done in 3 or 4 sessions. But for most people, 6 to 8 sessions is where you want to get them to. But also, if you're able to retain somebody through their full course of rehab, it improves word of mouth, improves perception of quality, and it improves your return on advertising spend. And why that's important is word of mouth, at the end of the day, is going to be your best growth lever, because word of mouth patients are higher buy-in, higher trust, and more likely to get a good result anyway. Now, your return on advertising spend is 140 per week for 4 patients, and each patient, say, is worth about 1,800 to 1,000. If you do the math, you're spending $140 per week. You're getting 4 new patients, and now each patient is worth 800 to 1,000. So your return on advertising spend is, I would say, almost 8 to 1. Every dollar you put in, you're getting $8 back. And that means you have profit to then reinvest either into your ad spend or into improving your service. Now, if you didn't have that and you only have 1-to-1, so you see people come in once, they leave. Although you won't lose money because you're still getting patients in, you also don't make any profit, because every patient that comes in, you're spending more money to get more, and you're not able to see them ongoing, so you don't actually make the profit off the back end. So this is why communication is really important, because you need to be able to convince the patient to stay for the clinical recommended time frame of treatment. Again, let me be very clear. You should not hold patients if they're ready for discharge. However, you do need the skill to explain and educate them why they should stay with you until they finish off their complete rehab. Better outcomes for them, better return on advertising for you, and also, just in general, a better service and a better quality of product. And the third thing, which I touched on briefly, was environment. When he decided to move into his new spot, we wanted to uplift the entire operation, but also we understood that the environment in which he operated sent a message to the people. And so we actually consider his environment, the design, part of the product. There are so many clinics out there that actually feel like a ER room and a hospital, which is not wrong if you are a hospital, but if you're a private clinic and you want people to come to pay you for a private service, you need to be able to provide an environment where they feel welcomed and they feel like they're justified coming here for a private service and not going to just an ER room. So by investing in an environment, he created the premium experience. And I'm talking thousands of dollars extra to create the ambience. But the mathematics works out to be one-time big spend for lifetime use. So remember this, it's a one-time big spend for lifetime use, which means it's not an ongoing cost. And it's a one-time time effort, planning-wise, for a lifetime zero-time effort. So it also fits into our criteria of not having to spend too much time thinking about it. We just want to think about this once to set the foundation so we never have to think about it again. So all of this is basically the architecture of it all. It started off with mindset. That's the key. We got to think about this differently. And then the first aspect that we had to build was making sure that he has a regular stream of patients coming through. Now, from the content generation side, once we found content that was working for him, we started putting money into it so that his money and his time worked for him, and he didn't have to spend all this time creating new content. And as his work grew, as he delivered great results, word of mouth grew. So now he's got this invisible marketing that's happening in the background that we can never measure, but we know it's working because he's getting more and more people coming because he helped another patient. So that's the lead generation side. And then that leads into the pricing component, which is where, in order to price high, he needed to showcase how different he was, which is in his content. He needed to actually price high, and he needed to give people a reason why it's justified that he could price higher above everyone else. And that comes down to the flywheel of his content. You make great content, it helps people, you expand it and you scale it out, and now your pricing becomes less of an issue. And once you develop the pricing component, so now you're earning more money for the same amount of time, so you're not spending more time treating, you have room to breathe, that then funnels back into your lead generation, because you can spend more time being creative, you can spend more time creating more content if you want, you can scale your ad spend, or you could just chill out. That's fine too. But these two things go hand in hand if you want to create your 200K practice. And the last component, which I'm sure most physios and chiros are really great at, is just the product. None of this actually work if you don't have a good product. And what I mean by that is you can have new patients coming in, but if your product sucks, they'll see you once and never come back. You can have the highest pricing, people will come see you once, they pay the money, but if they don't come back, that says something bad about your product as well. If you're not able to see your patients for the 6 to 8 sessions that they need you, then you will always be struggling to find new patients because they only see you once and then they disappear. So you're always trying to find new leads and new patients, when what you really want is for them to stay with you until they finish and they come back every year or every time they get injured. And that all comes down to your product. This is the entire architecture that we've built so far for 99 Physio, or aka Jonathan. And this is how he's been able to build up to 200K with not even 2 years of practicing on his own while only seeing about 40 patients a week. Now, don't get me wrong, this takes time. It took him probably 12 months to 14 months before this really hit the stride, but the blueprint's there. So if you want to do it for yourself, this is how you do it. And there you have it. That's the exact blueprint that we followed so far to help Jono reach 220K in less than 24 months of starting his own solo physio practice. Now, if you're in the same boat and you'd like some help getting to this level of freedom, then your next step is to book in a 30-minute strategic call by clicking the button below. We'll break down what you'd like to achieve, how you'll get there, and whether it would make sense for us to work together. My name's Phil, and I hope to speak with you soon. Thanks for watching.